What's up everyone, Colt Capperrune here. Thank you for stopping by for yet another video. I appreciate you being here. So today I want to go over something that I get a lot of questions on social media from clients, from people at coffee meetings, from lots of you in the comments section. I've been asked repeatedly how I got where I am and like my path from where I started to where I am now. So I want to go over that, and hopefully it will help shed some light on some strategies or some things that you can do to help you get further ahead in your music career. So today I'm actually headed back up to my hometown, Peoria, Illinois. A little bit bittersweet, but a few years ago my grandpa passed away. My grandpa was a fantastic pianist, and I grew up watching him play piano all the time. That's largely what got me into music to begin with. My grandma was a choir director and a voice coach, and my grandpa was a pianist, and he played like 20 instruments. It was crazy. But when he passed, I really wanted the piano that I grew up watching him play, and so I was able to get the piano, and it's been at storage in my sister-in-law's place since he passed, because we're building the new place, and the timing wasn't quite right to get it down here. So today I'm gonna go up back home and pick the piano up and get it back down here. Well, not today. It's a multiple day trip. So I just woke up, my buddy Johnny Walker's house. I'm really out of it. I'm really tired. I haven't had any coffee or anything. But this is his songwriting studio where he cranks out all of his hits. Anyway, thanks to Johnny for letting me crash yet again. I gotta tell you, the Dunkin' Donuts here in Peoria, way better than the Dunkin' Donuts in Tennessee. This is what I'm talking about right here. There's gotta be 6-7 shots of espresso in this thing. Only Dunkin' Donuts I've ever been to in the whole country that serves it like that. Welcome to my hometown of Peoria, Illinois. So I was born here in Peoria, but when I grew up in Bradford, one of my dad's friends actually had given me a guitar, and I was about 13, I think, and I played around with it for a little while, but then eventually I got tired of it. I was a kid, and so my parents told me that if I didn't take it seriously and learn how to play, they would make me give it back, and I said, I ain't giving this guitar back. So I started playing guitar. Fast forward to moving to Peoria, I ended up working at a music store, and very quickly found myself in a band, 2 bands actually, a cover band and an original band, and that was where it really all got started. Eventually, my original band was ready to record an album, and we were a bunch of broke kids. We didn't have the money to go into a studio and actually record a good album. So the music store I worked at let me put some gear on a loan and make payments on it. And so I got a little recorder. Oh, this camera's getting heavy. I got a little recorder and did the first album ourselves. And I think I was 19 when that happened. So that album turned out pretty good. And a bunch of other local bands, 3 or 4, ended up having me do their record. And then it just kind of kept going from there. I don't know why I keep looking up at the screen. I can't tell if it's too bright out here. I'm not used to doing this outside. So then the next few years, I did a few more records, and then a few more records after that. And eventually, I was asked to become a partner in a place called the Noise Gate Recording Studio. We're gonna go see that building right now. So this is the old studio in Pekin, Illinois. This was called the Noise Gate Recording Studio. Apparently, it's called The Zone now. And so after I recorded a handful of bands in my home, I became a partner in this studio. And there were several of us involved in this studio, and we just all split the rent like roommates, the utilities like roommates, and then it was kind of first come, first serve on booking studio time. And so I was here for a handful of years with other partners, and then at the same time as I was here, I was also working at Floors Music in Peoria, Illinois, and I was the guitar tech there, and took guitar lessons there, and did sales there, and also played acoustic gigs, was still doing the cover band thing, was still doing the original band thing. I was just kind of doing everything. And about halfway through working here in the studio, I started doing front of house and mixing live for bands. And so I just got to the point where I was doing tons of things. I was just throwing everything at the wall to see what would stick. And simultaneously, I didn't realize it, to see what made me happiest, what I felt the most connected to within music. And so that was that was a real important step. And this studio right here was a very important step as well, because it was the first time I was in a commercial space, and it was the first time that, regardless of what it looks like now, it was the first time that I had access to a commercial space and a real business that I could invite clients to and work out of, and that was a big deal. Off and on, I took guitar lessons at Flores Music in Peoria from a guy named Dan Gruder, and that was really an important step as well for me, because I remember going in to lessons, and he would make me play one note and vibrato. And then we would do that for like an entire lesson, and then the next lesson he would have me bend up a half step and vibrato, and then the next lesson he would have me bend up a whole step and vibrato. And we spent a lot of time on that vibe stuff that really made a huge impact on my physical ability to play guitar. And it was kind of part of the foundation that set me up to look at things under a microscope, to really look at my productions under that much of a microscope, that the devil is in the details, that the little things matter, that good enough is not good enough, and all of these things. And working at the music store, where I was surrounded by good guitar players all the time. I was surrounded by some of the better players in the area, and it made a drastic impact on me that I was able to just absorb all of that stuff, because they were all more established, they were all more experienced, they all played way more gigs than I had at the time. And that was really important for me to surround myself with people like that very early on. So when the time came for me to leave this studio, I ended up building my own place downtown Peoria. That was the beginning of Dark River Studios. That right there is the Murray building. That's the building my studio used to be in. We're right downtown Peoria, Illinois. So when I left the Noisegate recording studio and went and did my own thing, Dark River Studios, this was the building that Dark River Studios started in. It was a good space. I'll throw up some pictures here real quick. So I was here for a handful of years and had my first bit of success, had my first like national clients, and really things started going right here in this building. Eventually the building was redeveloped into condos and businesses, and so I got the boot with a bunch of other creatives. It was a whole creative building. There was painters and sculptors and photographers and all kinds of people in here, and we all got the boot. And to be honest with you, it was the best thing that ever happened to me, because it was really what prompted my move to Nashville. This was the second studio that I had, real studio that I had been involved in here in Peoria area, and I just decided that if I was gonna keep doing this, I wasn't gonna keep doing it here, because things were okay, but it was very difficult to make a real living, a real career here. But I have to say that having my own studio, my own space, a really good sounding, large physical space, was a huge reason why I was able to get where I am in my skill set, because I was able to take the time to experiment in a good sounding room with decent microphones, and so I would do stuff like I wouldn't charge people for drum setup, and I would have drummers come in the night before the session, and we would set up, and however long it took for me to get a drum sound that I was happy with, that's what we would do. And they wouldn't get charged for that. That was on me. That was my learning curve. And so having my own physical space that I had my own keys to, I could go in and out at any hours of the day or night, that was a huge factor in my skill set growing to the point where I can do what I do now. Y'all ain't ever had no Casey's Pizza before, you don't even know what's up. This gas station right here is the bomb, and I miss it so much. It's one of the few things that I miss from Illinois, and if you've ever been in the Midwest, you've probably stopped at a Casey's. So we got the piano loaded, and It is on its way back to Nashville, as am I. We'll finish wrapping up talking about all the rest of the stuff back at my place. But first, first of all, I want to apologize for some of the terrible audio that some of those previous shots had. I didn't really have any idea that it was windy enough to be doing that to the microphone, and I'm sorry, I just had to make the best of it. So once my last studio in Illinois got redeveloped into condos and businesses, and me and a whole bunch of other people got the boot out of that studio, I was really taken back, and am I gonna keep doing this? Am I gonna keep kind of struggling? And am I gonna rebuild? Am I gonna move? Like, what is it that I'm gonna do? And I took some time to really contemplate this. So we talked about it, me and my wife talked about it real hard, and we decided that it was time for a change. My wife was having a hard time keeping work. Illinois is an economic train wreck, was then, and it's continuing to get worse. And we just kind of felt like it was time to go somewhere else and do something else. There was only a couple cities that were options, and they had to be music-based cities, so it was really kind of Nashville or LA, maybe Austin, and maybe New York. Nashville seemed like the right fit. I was already doing some country stuff, and I was already heavily in the rock scene, and there's way more organic rock, country, folk, Americana. The band scene here, the live instrument scene here is about the strongest of anywhere in the country, so it made the most sense to move to Nashville. So my wife started applying at jobs, got one right away. I still had like 3 records to finish up and had to get the house ready to sell, and it was a while before I made it down. She moved down about 10 months ahead of me, and in that time I was down here doing sessions and coming down and visiting, and then just trying to get everything wrapped up and get ready to make the move myself. Now, I've discussed Nashville in other videos, and I'll put a link, I guess, right here, or whichever side it is, I never can remember. The general concept back home was that you're gonna get eaten alive, that your barista or your waiter is a better guitarist than you, that there is so much competition here that it's pointless to come here and try to make it. So I knew I was taking a big shot. I came to town, even with the experience and the years under my belt and the success that I had, I really came here expecting to get eaten alive. Now, I want this to be very, very clear that I've said this many times publicly, that I think that you have to be willing to do whatever it takes for however long it takes, and that is how you get ahead in the music industry. Any attitude less than that, you probably won't make it. But moving to Nashville lit a new fire under my ass, and it's such an inspirational city. It was so wonderful to be surrounded by all the talent, and very quickly I started meeting people that had won Grammys and very experienced, successful people within the industry. It took no time to start making those connections, and not only was it a fresh start, but it was like the sky's the limit, because the biggest producers in the world live here. Some of the biggest mix engineers in the world live here. Some of the best, most accomplished session players in the world live here in Nashville. And so just being surrounded by that was a huge inspiration and really forced me to level up. So moving to Nashville, I assumed I was gonna get my ass handed to me, so that meant a couple things. One, buying a house was not an option because I didn't know if I was gonna lose my butt here, if I was gonna hightail it back home in 6 months. Also, getting into a commercial space was not an option for me because I had no idea what was going to happen. About 30% of my clientele was on the national level when I moved here, which means my income dropped by about 70% when I made the move. And so I felt like it was a terrible financial decision to try to get a commercial space right out of the gates, and that was absolutely the right move. So we landed in an apartment, and I took the second bedroom of this apartment as my studio. I'll throw up some pictures here. Any of you that have been following the channel for a long time, you have been around since I was filming videos in that apartment bedroom studio. So when I first got here and had that apartment bedroom as a studio, I was super self-conscious, but it was very much this is what I have to deal with. This is what I can afford right at the moment. So I'm just gonna take this and make it work. And that's what I did. I had a good handful of number ones on FM radio charts, on Amazon, on iTunes. I had a good handful of number ones that came out of that bedroom apartment, some of which I recorded there, some of which I produced there, some of which I only mixed there. Hey there. So I needed to interrupt this real quick because sometimes I'm not so great at this video stuff. The entire title of this video was that I charted on Billboard. This is the point where I charted on Billboard. Okay, back to it. There was a lot of successful music that came out of that apartment. And the thing that I realized is here in Nashville, no one cares. They just want the end result that you're capable of. So when I first moved to town, I just had this feeling that the way for me to make this work was to be better at marketing and better at networking than other people. I'm in Music City now. There's no way I'm going to be the best producer in town. There's no way I'm going to be the best guitar player in this town. There's no way I'm going to be the best mix engineer in this town. So I just did the very best, as always with my whole career, I did the very best that I could at producing and mixing and playing guitar. But then I had this idea right when I moved here that I thought, there can't be a single person in this town that doesn't know who I am. And that instantly became my goal. And so I started going out to writers' rounds and whatnot, and I found it very difficult to create relationships with people over a beer because it's loud and you can't have a real conversation. And I very quickly switched to coffee. Now, full disclosure, when I first moved here, I didn't even like coffee. I didn't drink coffee at all. But I realized very quickly that this town runs on coffee. Everyone goes and gets coffee. And so I was like, well, guess I'm going to learn to like coffee. And so now 5 years later, I have had coffee with between 2 and 4 people a week for that many years. I don't know how many people that is, 1,000, 1,500, 2,000 people. A lot of people I've had coffee with. And so while I'm fortunate enough to work on some bigger projects and some label projects, and I'm fortunate enough to have stuff chart halfway often, the day in, day out, what actually keeps me busy every single day is these independent artists, these coffee meetings that I have, that I've had, 1,000 or 2,000 coffee meetings. A percentage of those people end up hiring me. Now, that's not necessarily the reason for the coffee. If they never hire me, then it is what it is. But a percentage of them end up hiring me, and that is largely what keeps me as busy as I am. So after years in the apartment studio and booking bigger studios in town when I needed a big commercial space or when I was tracking drums or whatever, the time finally came to get my own place. And I looked at 30 probably. I probably looked at 30 rooms around town to rent, just commercial spaces, and they were all either crazy expensive or they were just not what I needed. They needed a ton of work. I needed somewhere I could just push my gear in and make records. And so we ended up building, and we built this place, and it has been absolutely wonderful ever since. So back to how I got where I am though. There's a few key things that I think were extremely important in terms of my growth and my success over my career. One of which was taking chances. Getting involved in my first studio, building my second studio, making the move to Nashville, even though my career was very much set when we built this place, even building this place. Those are big chances. Now, I've had a couple day jobs throughout my whole entire adult life, and quitting those day jobs every time it was taking a chance. So you have to be willing to take risks, I believe. The next most important thing is always be striving to improve. Relentless upward pressure. Every time I post on Instagram, every time I mix a song, every time I mic a snare drum, every time I play guitar on a song, every time I film one of these YouTube videos, I'm always asking myself, how can I improve upon it? How can I make this the best that it can possibly be? And I think that attitude towards everything that I do is really important in terms of my growth. And I think that that is one of the most important things that hopefully I can pass on to you through this video. Social media very quickly after I moved became a massive part of my entire strategy, of my entire business plan. And now what I do is I use Facebook and Instagram to connect with people that I would like to work with. And I try to flip that into a coffee if they're in Nashville. And if they're not, I just try to build a relationship, build some rapport, like and comment on their stuff. And the last thing is that there are not really any single large events throughout my career that made my career. Charting top 40 on Billboard was a big one. First starting to work with labels was pretty good. And there's a bunch of small things like that. But I was always under this impression that I would eventually work on something that would blow me up, and then I would be set. And that just isn't the case. Even as successful stuff as I've worked on, it's just not the case. It's just building blocks. You build a foundation, and then you're building the first floor and the second floor. It's just a constant snowball, a constant push, and things continue to get easier and bigger and better as time goes on. And so hopefully I want to pass that on to you watching. I know there's not actually any really instruction in this video, but I hoped that just telling my story and letting you guys see exactly the path that I took would help you figure out how to do something yourself, or to remain more positive, or whatever. And so I really hope that this helped you. Don't forget to subscribe and hit the bell icon next to the subscribe tab, and hit me up on Instagram at Colt Capperrune. Check out my website, coltcapperrune.com. I'm on Facebook too, if that's your thing. Really appreciate you guys hanging out all the way to the end. It really means a lot to me, so thank you for all of the support. We'll see you guys in the next one.